Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May our gathering for worship honor and embody the power and the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and to share. With these words from the Reverend Maureen Killeran, I welcome you to worship with our Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder community via Zoom. I am Mary Clough, your worship leader this morning. The mission of UUCB is to be a beacon of liberal religion, to connect bravely, deepen spiritually, embody justice, and always love. As Unitarian Universalists, we promise to stay connected to each other as we search for truth and meaning, each in our own way. We covenant with all of life and seek to repair any disconnect, isolation, or separation, especially during these trying times. If you're a first-time visitor or want more information about us, we invite you to contact our Congregational Life Director, Beth Elliott. Her contact information is on the screen below and on our website. Now, as we enter into our time of worship, please silence your computer and your phones. To mute Zoom, click on the microphone icon on the lower left of your computer screens. And if you are experiencing difficulties with Zoom, you can call or text Beth 505-250-6786.
This is the day that has been given to us. It is a day we could not have created, could not have earned. And regardless whether or not we deserve it, this day does come to us. And it does come as a gift from the universe, a gift from God, a gift from life itself. So come and let us worship with gratitude for these and so many blessings. Worship with humility for our shortcomings, and worship with hope that we may continue to transform our lives and to transform our world. And with these words, I too welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder in its virtual worship service. It is good to be together in this way when we are not able to be all in the same room with one another, the same physical room. And I invite us into this time of worship, which I'm pleased to say today will include our hymns and special music being led live by our music director, Deborah Hammond. And so let us enter into this time of worship by singing together our opening hymn. It's entitled, "Comfort Me." The words will be on your screen momentarily.
Sing with me, sing. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Well, we come to our time for chalice lighting. And if you have a chalice or candle near your computer, I invite you to get ready to light it at this time. And also, as we are beginning to grow accustomed to, an opportunity to share by typing in the chat room where your chalice is lit. As we hear from yet another of our members of our new ministerial search committee who are taking turns over these several weeks sharing their chalice lightings, I'm pleased to introduce one of them at this time, Pam Leland. Pam?
Good morning. My name is Pam Leland, and I am honored to have been selected to be on the Settled Minister Search Committee. My experience on the Interim Minister Search Committee last year is very fresh in my mind. I understand now, in an even more profound way, just what an awesome responsibility is being entrusted to us. How this is so much more than hiring a new minister. It's really about being entrusted with steering the future of this community of faith and who we desire to be together in this world. In these unprecedented days of social distancing and staying home and staying safe, and the sudden need to find new and creative ways of being in meaningful relationships with one another, the long-term health and sustainability of this beloved community, already so important in my life, is even more compelling to hold in mind as we engage in the search process. We are not now who we were this time last year. Who will we be as a faith community this time next year as we negotiate these uncharted ways of being together apart? When I lit the chalice the same weekend last year, just before Earth Day, I mentioned how aware I am that meaningful relationships require skin in the game, about how human beings crave connection, and how the only truly satisfying connections, in my experience, come from seeing and being seen. In these current challenging conditions of necessary separation, this feels far, far more important for each of us, individually and as a congregation. I love how Reverend Eric and Reverend Dana and the staff and the various ministries of UUCB have responded so creatively and adaptively, and how we're finding new ways to connect. Some things are challenging our growing edges, but we've come a far way in a very short span of time. We're thinking about how to remain connected and be more inclusive. And this has also opened up the opportunity to expand our community beyond local geography. We've seen extended families showing up for a virtual church service from across the country and even overseas, I believe. We have an opportunity in these strange days to invite others who are searching for connection to join us and be seen and valued among us. I invite us all to think about who we know would appreciate joining us here on Sunday mornings, or for meditations, or for youth group, or for the Fiber Arts virtual knit and stitch group on Friday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. And how we can get the word out for other communities to be together apart. This is the real work in these challenging circumstances. It's not neatly laid out for us how we work and be in relationship with one another. It actually never really was. We just thought it was. We're being called into new expressions of covenant. How are we intentionally showing up for each other now? As we move into yet another new period of transition with the ministerial search, there are bound to be times when we have differing views of what we're looking for in a new minister and what that means for our community. And I'm still very committed to staying in covenant with each of you, even if it gets uncomfortable, even if we don't always know how best to move forward together. I offer again this poem by Wendell Berry for all our consideration, for our real work ahead. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. I light this chalice in honor of these unprecedented challenges of our times, of our lives, and how they can bring us together stronger than ever.
May the many chalice lights now shining across our community inspire us with the knowledge that even in our individual homes and locations, we are together with others in our shared hopes and faith. We now invite all those gathered in our various locations to rise in body or in spirit and join together in the spirit of fellowship and community as we say aloud our congregation's covenant. Words are on the screen. Gather in fellowship.
Out and touch one another.
Care.
Well, I want to share a story with you. It's actually a true story in which I'm a minor character. And it's a story that may feel a bit emotionally tense for a few moments. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you from the get-go. This story does have a happy ending, even though it could have been far less happy. But it's something that happened a little over 10 years ago to a family that I'm very close with. I'll just use initials for the names of the people. T and J are the couple, and they had 4 children. I have 4 children, of course. The youngest one, M, was at the time about 4.5 years old. But she'd already gone through some incredible life experiences, because even at 4.5 years old, M was a 2-time cancer survivor, having had kidney cancer first as an infant, which then recurred about 1.5 years before this story happened. Now, she had been treated successfully both times, and it was a joy for us to join with them for Christmas Day, for the Christmas meal. And they, of course, the T and J were getting so many things ready for Christmas for their children as well. But what I didn't realize at the time was that 2 days earlier, December 23rd, they noticed that M was crossing her eyes, which doesn't necessarily seem like that big of a deal, except they both knew and realized immediately that the kind of cancer she had had can, in rare occasions, recur in the brain. And that cross eyes can sometimes be a signal of a brain impairment that can be caused by cancer. But they made the choice, after quickly talking to one another, to wait a few days to say anything about it. They wanted to give the children a good and a happy Christmas, even if things turned out badly. So they had all of the presents ready for Christmas morning. They had also been renovating their game room and were able to share that with the children for the first time on Christmas morning, which was a real delight for them. And we joined them for the Christmas meal, as well as another couple that they were very close to. None of the rest of us knowing their concerns about their youngest daughter. Now, Christmas was on a weekend. I believe it was a Saturday that day, that year. It might have even been a Friday. So it took them a couple of days before they were able, after Christmas, before they were able to get into a doctor's office. And the doctor that initially saw them encouraged them to contact the cancer specialist that had worked with them when she was even younger. He referred them to an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist that he knew, who specialized in the kinds of problems they were concerned about. They were able to get in the next day. They ran a couple of different tests, and what they discovered was that M was farsighted. She needed glasses, and that was all that was wrong. Nothing else. It was an incredible relief for them, and it was only that night, by writing a post on her personal blog, that my friend Jay finally shared this news with others, including with us. I was so relieved, of course, and my heart broke for what they went through for those 7 days in between noticing him having an eye problem and finding out that it was just an eye problem. Excuse me. And I realized that part of what they were going through was a particular kind of grief. That may seem strange because nothing had happened yet, but we talk in many contexts, particularly when I interned with a hospice agency as a chaplain. We spoke about anticipatory grief. Grief is our emotional response to loss, and sometimes the grief process begins even as we're anticipating a loss. That's what T and J were starting to go through those few harrowing days, anticipating the loss of their daughter's health, the loss of some of their family routines as they had to take the precautions they had taken before to ensure her health if her cancer had returned while she got yet another round of cancer treatments. And letting go of the sense that their children were safe and healthy. Thank goodness that wasn't what happened to them. But the experience of grief they went through in those few days was one that says a lot to us, I think, about what it means for us to grieve, and particularly how we encounter our grief in these complex times when the losses we're experiencing are so complex and unusual in our experiences. But I'll say more about that in a few minutes later in the service. For now, I invite us to sing.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine,
Well, we do share with one another in so many ways as we worship together. And I invite us now in this new worship format to take our new way to share our blessings and concerns, the life transitions that we carry with us and that may have impacted us in recent days. If you're coming to this time of worship with concerns and or with blessings, I do invite you to open the chat function on this program, Zoom, this software. It's found near the bottom of your screen, and in that chat box, type the word blessing or type the word concern, or both if they apply. And while we may not have time for sharing details, I certainly invite you, if your blessing or concern involves another person or other people, to briefly type who they are as well. In doing so, may this symbolic sharing lessen the weight of our concerns, and may it amplify the impact of our blessings. Please share now. For all these blessings and concerns, we offer our prayerful thoughts and our support as a caring community of faith.
Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be with you today. And I invite you now to listen to the Tibetan bowl and begin to notice your breathing as we gently settle into this present moment. Breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. Allow yourself to settle into just your breath. And feel that spark of life that lives within you with every beating of your heart. That spark of life that was at the beginning of all creation, that is the very essence of love itself, resides within you. The air that all beings have breathed throughout all the life of the planet, you are breathing that now. Settle into your breath, into that beautiful fresh air that we have. The energy of creation is the energy of love, and it permeates every cell of our being. Feel this flowing through you and tune into this truth. There is much to love about being alive, and with love, we also inevitably experience heartbreak and grief. Khalil Gibran reminds us, when you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Sorrow and grief are a natural part of living. Hold it gently, with love and care, the grief that resides within you. With every breath, breathe love in, out, and through these feelings, as we do not push them away, but we hold them gently. Let them be soothed and calm as you hold them close. For this too is a part of being alive. From the Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, breathing in makes me calm. Breathing out brings me ease. Breathing in, I know I am alive. Breathing out in this present moment. Breathing in, there is only this present moment. Breathing out, it is a wonderful moment. May we be fully alive with whatever is arising. Love and blessings to all of you. Amen.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
Our reading is a poem entitled Inexplicable, written by the Reverend Karen Johnson, minister of the Unitarian Society of East Brunswick, New Jersey. She writes, "Inexplicable, how we rise each morning instead of burying our heads under bed covers, sewing them shut. Why we keep welcoming babies with bone-deep joy to this sordid world. How we fill burlap sacks with grit and gratitude, our hands shredded as we drag one over the other. How we refuse the daily pull towards greedy dark, keeping at least one toe, some of us whole torso, in the light. Inexplicable. It's what makes a poem worth writing, worth reading, worth flooding the world with redundant, flawed attempts at explanation. It's just the way it is. There is no other way. Stumbling every time, practice or no, just part of the bargain, the unavoidable, intractable, inexplicable bargain."
I'm going to leave this screen up a little bit longer than we normally do because I, for one, certainly found it helpful. And I suspect much of it is true, not just of children, but of others as well. But the reminder that when we're grieving and we struggle to express that grief, that's especially true for those who are young and don't yet have the life experience to give expression to their emotions in certain ways. But it's true for, I suspect, many of us at all ages of life. Remembering that we do grieve in so many different ways, we express that grief in so many different ways, and we feel it even in times and situations that we may not think of as grief, still has an impact on us and on those around us. Go ahead and end the screen share. Thank you, Michael. There is an article that was published a few weeks ago that's been somewhat widely circulated on social media. A few of you may have seen it. It comes from, of all sources, the Harvard Business Review. But the title of the article, published just a week or two after widespread physical distancing measures had started, was, and I quote, "That discomfort you are feeling is grief," unquote. The bulk of the article was actually an interview with David Kessler, who is certainly someone who knows something about grief. Indeed, he co-authored a book with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, largely considered the world's most influential expert on grief. And even those who disagree with the 5 stages of grief that she first articulated and that he helped her to flesh out and their co-writing, worked with her to flesh out in their co-writing, there are still some insights that are important for us. And of course, one of the key insights from that article is the simple acknowledgement that this complex set of emotions that so many of us are feeling as our lives have changed so radically in this time of pandemic is a kind of grief. It is an emotional response to loss, and it is actually a fairly normal emotional response to loss. It may not feel normal to us because we each have not been through something like this before. But if we compare our experiences to those of so many others, I'm certainly hearing in posts on social media and elsewhere, very common themes that are spread among so many of us. Another theme that they lift up that I thought was so helpful is the fact that some of the basic current losses that so many of us are experiencing right now, that we're responding to in our grieving, include losing our sense of safety as we worry about growing sick, which a few of us already have from this pandemic, or worry that loved ones who are particularly vulnerable might do so. But we're also grieving our loss of routine, and we've lost a formerly predictable economic functioning around us in our society. And of course, too many of us have had even deeper losses of employment, of their own health, and in some cases, the lives of those they love. One other note in that article that helped me was the understanding that the anxiety that many of us are feeling, even that too is a kind of grief. It's a kind of anticipatory grief. Now, David Kessler suggested it was an unhealthy one. And while I see his point, I'm less concerned about that, but more interested in the fact that when we become anxious about the future, part of what we're doing is we're beginning the anticipation of a new kind of grief, in addition to what we may already be experiencing. And that's helpful for me as I remember the many different kinds of loss that we can experience. It's not just losing a relationship from death or divorce or some other kinds of separation, including our physical separation. But sometimes we're grieving our loss of role. We may have played a particular role in our work, amongst our extended family members, in our church, that we may not be fulfilling in the same way now. There can be losses of certain understandings of who we are. Many of us, beginning in adolescence, begin to have these experiences of letting go of aspects of ourselves, and these continue in different ways often throughout our lives. And there can be sadness, there can be disappointment, there can be hope for a new future, all combined, as well as other emotions. And sometimes we even grieve loss of our own functionality as we age and realize that we just can't do some of the things that we used to do. That's a kind of loss too. And it's natural to feel certain ways about that. But when we're grieving, there are things that we can do to help us to live through and move through that grief appropriately. And the very first one is to simply acknowledge that it is grief. Acknowledge that we've lost something and we're having feelings about that. Your feelings may be different than my feelings, even if the loss is the same, but they're both still grief, even though the forms they take and the feelings they evoke vary from one person to another. But it's just as important for us to let ourselves feel those feelings as we go through them, so that we can indeed take opportunities to live into the emotions and to move through them, to process them. When we push them away, that's what not only delays the grief, but tends to intensify it over time. And I'll add one other. It's important for us, as best we can, understanding that when we're in deep grieving, this is harder than usual, and especially when we're physically distanced from one another, but to find ways to connect with each other and to help each other through the grief. And that brings me back to my friends T and J and their young daughter. That night after Jay posted the blog post and let us all know what they'd been going through, I made a comment on the post saying that I was so relieved and that M was okay, and certainly understood that they chose not to tell us. And then added, now having said that, I also added to my fellow Unitarian Universalist, who I knew had a hymnal at home. I'd been in her home just a few days before, after all. Get some paper and a pen. Open your gray hymnal toward the back and copy reading number 698 several hundred times. Emphasize the last line. Now, what's reading number 698? Michael, will you go ahead and put it up on the screen? Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Thank you, Michael. And as we remember that we're not alone, even in the moments when it's hard, as a person who's lived with depression, I know that on the bad days, it can be especially hard to reach out to others. But when we can take the moments to find someone to connect to, as I said to Jay, you don't have to tell me, but tell somebody. Share this burden so you don't have to go through it alone. Then you are opening yourself to a kind of, to use a theological term, grace, to sources of strength coming in from outside yourself that can do so much to carry you through the transitions. Jay's response a few days later was to point out that, it had pissed her off that I ratted her out to God. But it was also very clear that she was teasing as she said it, and that she had so much to draw from as she moved forward in this life, including a wide network of people who supported her, who were invested in their daughter's well-being, but also in their well-being as well. And when we can all remind ourselves of that, then truly the burdens of our concerns can be lightened by their sharing. In these complex times of complex grief, so may it be for us all. Amen.
During this time, as we're not meeting in the same physical space, we're meeting virtually, we nonetheless are continuing our ministries, including new online ministries described on our church website's new blog. Not surprisingly, we also continue to welcome donations through online giving, as well as checks mailed to the church. The link for UUCB's online contribution page has just been added as a comment to this online post and can also be found on the UUCB web page. We also are continuing our support of nonprofit community partners in our Share the Plate program. During April, we will split our offering plate with the local nonprofit Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence, SPAN. SPAN is a human rights organization that supports and advocates for survivors of domestic violence. This is an incredibly dangerous time for survivors. We wanted to share a story from one of our current shelter residents, highlighting the unique barriers and struggles that survivors are facing during this time. The shelter resident, who was and is still pregnant, has been working with their SPAN advocate around employment. Her abuser refused to let her even leave the house, let alone get a job. Just before the stay-at-home order was put in place, the client got a job, and now our client has to decide if they feel safe leaving our shelter every day, and they are having to choose between the safety and health of their unborn child and their financial security and self-sufficiency. During these challenging times, we appreciate your generous support of Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence. May we be as generous as we can. We will now receive the offering. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life, and here are the words on your screen.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Who told me close, ring set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
And so, as we extinguish the flames in our various chalices, And as we go forth from this sacred time in these many sacred places where we have gathered, may we go with the knowledge that we are graced with the blessings of freedom and wholeness. For though our worship now ends, so begins our service. May we ever find new ways in these new times to serve this hurting world in the spirit of love. Go in peace.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with